soon we're going to have the 3 weeks of mourning and the Tisha B'Av, which is marking the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We hope the Mashiach comes this moment, and that we're gonna have mourning, M-O-R, instead of mourning, M-O-U-R, and we'll have a feast instead of a fast. Bezrat Hashem. That's the goal. But we know the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, where you had this individual who was a rich man. His friend was Kamsa. His enemy was Bar Kamsa. And by mistake, the messenger, instead of inviting Kamsa, invited Bar Kamsa. And so Kamsa came along, and the rich man was unhappy. And unfortunately, he made it very clear that he was unhappy. And he embarrassed him. He said, "Get out of my house." And the guy said, "Please, I'll pay for my portion." "No. Please, I'll pay for half of the meal. Just don't embarrass me." "Nope." And then he said, "I'll pay for the whole meal." "Nope." And then he went and told the emperor of Rome that the Am Yisrael was going against him. So the question is, this is obviously a tale. It doesn't say it in any of, to the best of my knowledge, in any of the. Question is, so he wanted, Kamsa was a friend and Bar Kamsa was the enemy, and the messenger invited Bar Kamsa instead of Kamsa. So the question is, why did Kamsa not show up at the meal?
Right.
You're his friend, no? You're the rich man's friend. Why aren't you there? Would have probably saved the destruction of the temple. All kinds of. What's the answer? He didn't get an invitation. Maybe the rich man forgot to send an invitation. He didn't get an invitation. What did we learn from here? If your friend is making a simcha, you show up at the simcha. It doesn't matter if you're invited or not. Especially in Eretz Yisrael. In America, you have place cards, and it's all fancy, and everybody has to with the bow tie. Don't you dare sit next to the wrong table, next to the wrong person. But over here, it's a machai. Come on.
Rabbi, in Jerusalem, you're having a wedding.
Everyone comes, and then they dance together, and you have a little chaim, and you have a little thing, this and that. So it's especially relevant over here. But I think it's a great message along the lines that we were saying earlier about coming, showing up, being part of it. Who cares? It's less important how long you come for. But the truth is that when a person, thank you very much. Here's the copies of the Rambam that we're learning now.
Hebrew, it's the words of the Rambam himself.
It's the words of the Rambam, and don't worry, we'll be translating into English, B'ezrat Hashem. So, okay, I think the point is clear. Let's move on to the Hilchot Eidut. We are inching towards the end of this book of Shoftim. This is the final book of the Rambam, the final of the 14 books, Yasher Koach. And in 2 weeks, almost exactly 2 weeks, we're going to finish the entire Rambam. The Rebbe instituted to learn 3 chapters a day of Rambam. If you missed the class or you want to have it on your phone, look at our website, jerusalemchabad.org, and you'll be able to do daily study, and you have Hebrew and English. You can choose 3 chapters a day. You can choose 1 chapter a day, or just the 1 paragraph, the Sefer HaMitzvot. But it's really important to try to keep up to the cycle, especially as we approach the conclusion of the 40th cycle since 1984. First, let's do the mitzvah. What's the mitzvah of Eidut? Eidut is the laws of testimonies. There are a number of mitzvahs. Let's talk about, first of all, the main mitzvah. Laha'id doesn't say it over here, so I'm just going to tell it to you outside. Before he starts several chapters, this is chapter 17, but before he goes to that, the Rambam said, in a very short paragraph, he says what the mitzvahs are. The first mitzvah is to testify in Beit Din if you know information about a certain scenario. It's a positive mitzvah. If you can be a witness, you need to say that testimony. And there's also a prohibitive mitzvah not to withhold a testimony, information that you know about a certain scenario that you could be helping to testify in the Beit Din, in the court. There are more mitzvahs about how much to investigate the witnesses, how to investigate. There are different subjects. There are for monetary subjects. There are for life subjects. But I'm just trying to give you, at least in a nutshell, the concept, the idea of the Eidut. I also want to add one more interesting thing. I mentioned it a couple of days ago, right after davening, but I can't talk about Hilchot Eidut without mentioning this. Is that on a deeper level, on a Kabbalistic, on a mystical level, the idea of Eidut is a testimony that we, each and every one of us, are a testimony that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is in the world. The fact itself that we walk around, every human being, especially a Jew, we walk around, we have it written all over our foreheads, that we walk around, with a kippah, and we present ourselves properly, and we share words of Torah. The fact itself that we walk around and we are created in the image of Hashem, we are Eidut. We are a testimony that Hashem exists in the world, and every mitzvah that we do reveals a testimony. So in other words,
when we're a witness, we automatically free ourselves from sin, because Hashem is not going to let us be a witness if we sin.
Yafeh. That's an interesting point. If you're a sinner, that's an interesting point. So just to finish my point that I was saying earlier, that if just like we said in the beginning, that there's a mitzvah to say Eidut, to say testimony, if you know information about someone or a certain scenario, so too, it's a mitzvah to spread Hashem's godliness. That's why we're here. Every minute that we're here, every day that we're here as a bracha from Hashem, is that we have the ability to be able to spread Hashem's godliness. That's this mitzvah, this positive mitzvah, on a deeper metaphorical level. Okay, now we're in Perek Shiva Asar, the 17th chapter. These, in the laws of Eidut, the chapters are a little bit shorter. So let's see. However far we get will be amazing. Every word, every halacha is priceless. So there are different subjects, of course, when we talk about the idea of testimony. So now we're going to find out. Just 1 second, please. Who is a kosher witness and who is not? And there are many details. It's not only about who is a kosher witness, but how to say proper testimony. This is law number 1. Mi shehidu lo anashim rabim ugdolim b'chokhmah u'v'yirah. If there are many people, great people, in wisdom and fear of Hashem, shehem omrim, they say about a certain individual, shera'u ploni, she'avar avera plonit, that they saw a certain individual violate a certain sin. Is that word transgress a certain sin, right? Violate a mitzvah, but transgress a sin. Oh, or shelava mi ploni, that he borrowed from a certain person. Afal pi shehu ma'amin hadavar belibo ki'ilu ra'u. Even if you believe 100% as if you've seen it, lo ya'id. So let's say you're walking in the street and 100 great rabbis from the Eidah Charedit, the highest court that we have today, come and tell you, we saw Mr. Shmerel borrow, or Mr. Shmerel, God forbid, hurt someone. You're not allowed to say testimony, because you didn't see it yourself. Testimony means I saw it myself. To the extent that we have halacha, we have a law that says that if you saw an event, an incident yourself, you cannot be the judge. Because the judge has to be, what's the word for it? Impartial. That's the word. Impartial, thank you.
Once
Where
you've seen it,
you can't, exactly. You can't wholeheartedly trust two individuals. If you weren't there, then you say, okay, Reuven, what do you say? Shimon, what do you say? You're two witnesses. And then based on that, according to the framework of halacha, we could come to a ruling. We come to a final ruling. But if the person if you saw it yourself, you cannot be the judge. So afal pi, even though you're walking the street and the 100 greatest rabbis came to you and they told you, and shuma amina davar belibo, you believe it. Wow, look at these holy rabbis are telling me that it happened. Ki'ilu ra'ahu. Sometimes you have a vision. We teach in Chassidus that sometimes you see a concept. It's as if you see it for your. Some people have a talent, Baruch Hashem, to be able to visualize something as if you were there. It's a talent. Sometimes it's not a good thing, because if God forbid there's a tragedy, it could be very it could have a very bad impact on a person's emotion, and a person's soul. But there's a concept of you believe it so much, or you visualize it. It's as if you were there. Lo ya'id, you're not allowed to say testimony ad sheyir'eh hadavar be'einav, until you see the occurrence with your own eyes. Or yodelo haloveh mipiv, that the love, the borrower, will say with his own mouth. The Omar lo, tell him, Hayeh alai eid, please be for me a witness. Shaploni hilvali maneh, that Mr. Shmerel lent me $100. So if the borrower himself said, I borrowed from that person, you can be a witness, even though you weren't there. But we have a phrase in the Talmud, Hoda'at Baal Din K'mei Eidim. When someone he himself was part of the scenario, it's like 100 witnesses, because he himself admitted that he did it. It's not a bad thing to borrow, but it puts you in a situation where you need to pay back someone. So you need to compensate someone for something. Shnei, how do we know this? Because it says in the Torah, "V'hu ate," and you were a witness, or ra'ah, or you saw it, or yada, or you knew it. But if you just heard it from someone, or to bring a point across, you heard it from someone who heard from someone, you know what that means. Broken telephone.
You have to witness it.
Exactly. You can't wholeheartedly, with a straight face, say that you know 1,000% sure. If the Torah says you had to have seen it. With all due respect to the greatest rabbis, you need to be able to see it. Only then can you sincerely testify. V'chol hameid mipi acherim, and someone that testifies from the fact. There's one more line earlier. Ve'ein lecha edut shemitkayemet b're'iyah o b'idiyah ela be'edut mamon. There is no such thing as saying testimony from seeing or from knowledge only by re'iyah below yidiyah, only in monetary issues. How about someone that does say a testimony heard it from someone else? This is a false witness. And he transgresses a prohibitive mitzvah. And says in the verse, you should not respond. You should not testify. You should not bear false witness, exactly. Beit lefichach, therefore, the second halacha, therefore ma'aymin, we have a rule that we scare witnesses that come, part of the process of seeing if they're really sincere. As it said earlier, for example, they take out the Torah and the Torah is real, and they say, remember that you're going to be saying now testimony, and it can be very, very scary if you think about the implications of saying in front of a Torah and so on and so forth. So therefore we scare the witnesses af al edei mamon, even for witnesses that testify for monetary issues. The ketzad ma'amin aleim, how do we scare them? Ma'amin aleim b'fnei kol. First of all, it's in front of everybody. It's not like in a private room where we do the investigations. The iyum in Hebrew, iyum is scare, like fright. So anyone that's standing in the Beit Din at that time is there and listens. Umodin otam, and you let them know. Koach edut sheker, you tell them about how bad it is to say a false testimony. Uboshet, and the embarrassment and the shame. Hameid ba ba'olam hazeh u'ba'olam haba, for someone that testifies in this world, the busha, the embarrassment is in this world, and ba'olam haba, in the next world, which is obviously Much more.
Biblical times when they had witnesses.
Correct. That was part of the process.
For when the new moon.
Excellent. Great question. Yes, that's one of the things that there were two witnesses that would come. There was a whole process, and definitely that was part of the process. Especially, the Rambam tells us that there was a certain period of time. You want Jews to come, so you bring food. That's the famous rule. And so they used to set up a huge meal because they wanted to encourage people. Sometimes it was a schlep to come from. If they saw the sliver moon, in the birth of the new moon, so to speak, so you had to encourage them. So they had a big meal. So it was a certain time in our history, unfortunately, like there were these wise guys that they wanted the food. So they came and it was a challenge because basically, if they testify that they saw the new moon on the 30th day of the previous month, which, for example, now we're in Sivan. Sivan has 30 days to Sivan. Tammuz has 29 days. So if they come on the 30th day, that means that the next day is Rosh Chodesh, because they would say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Actually, it was that day, I'm sorry. That same day was considered Rosh Chodesh. They would light the fires and they would spread the word. So if these people were lying, then Pesach, which is 2 weeks after Rosh Chodesh Nisan, could be the next day or the previous day. So we have to be very, very careful. There are global implications for how Jews how they need to observe the mitzvot on many levels, based on if these guys are real or fake news, fake edim.
But they get hundreds of witnesses those days.
It could have been hundreds of witnesses. This is the process of making them scared. Then they would, after they said this, they would send everybody out of the room, out of the Beit Din. They would leave the greatest. I'm not sure if that means the tallest or the most knowledgeable. I'm not sure. And they would tell him. There's another version that says that makes a little more sense because between the Dayanim is the judges. Eidim, we're not allowed to be prejudiced and to do make one greater than the other. Interesting that there's another version. Omerlo, and we tell him. Emor, tell us. How do you know that this person really owes that person a certain amount of money? If he says, that guy told me that he himself owes the other person $100. Or for example, if he said, Ish ploni amar li shu chayav lo, or he said, a certain person told me that this guy owes him about two other individuals. The one guy owes him X amount of money. Lo amar klum, didn't say anything. Ad sheyomar, until he says, B'fanenu hodalo shu chayav. Until we have, I think it means that both witnesses have to be there, and this guy, he admitted that he borrowed from the other guy $100. Then they would bring in the second witness, and they would check him the same way. If they found that both of these individuals individually said the exact same report, then the rabbis, the judges, would deal with this back and forth, and then they would finalize the halacha. Now, how about if someone hides two witnesses? Let's say you have a plot where you like a setup, and you put two witnesses behind the wall. Or today, that would mean something like a secret video. By the way, in halacha, the video doesn't work because, for example, you need to have witnesses. It's an interesting subject about witnesses. There are two types of witnesses. There's the regular witnesses and the witnesses by a wedding. By a regular witness, so the witness is not really doing this, the accomplishing. If Reuven borrowed from Shimon $100, so Reuven and Shimon did the transaction. The witnesses are only technical like from the outside to assure, to affirm that the transaction happened. But by a wedding, when you have under the chuppah the two witnesses, that they see how the Chatan puts the ring on the index finger of the Kala, Harei at mekudeshet li b'tabat zo kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, the witnesses are the ones who accomplish it. It's not just that they're standing on the side. Without the witnesses, the wedding didn't happen. But if someone borrowed from someone, for example, $100, and there are two witnesses looking from the side, it happened. It's just that if you want to prove, then you have these two people from the side. But by a wedding, that's the halacha. And when people come to me and we plan the wedding and the chuppah, I tell people, some people think that they want to give the greatest rabbis the blessings, which is true. It's a very big honor to say the blessings under the chuppah, the Sheva Brachot. But I always encourage, and those of you, what? The witness is most important. It's most important. And it might not be like holding the cup or the wine. It looks more fancy, but we have to be very focused that the wedding happens in the holiest way, in the most sincere way, in the most real way. So anyone that's a witness, we try to make sure that it's good, but we want to even someone that's a tzaddik. The custom is everyone that's under the chuppah, you take upon yourself to be a tzaddik gomer. So to do a full tshuva. So that moment right before the blessing on the kiddushin on the wedding, the two witnesses they do. It's called hirhur tshuva. And the halacha is that if someone has a sincere feeling of complete teshuvah, then they're a tzaddik gomer. So this is no jokes. This is saying testimony, and you are making the wedding happen, and you want to be the holiest possible. So it's one of the things that the rabbi is supposed to do, is to make sure that the witnesses are as holy as possible. So the reason why I got into the subject, aside from the fact that it's a very, very interesting, so I think you had a question.
No.
Okay, feel free. So aside from the fact that it's a very interesting concept and it's very relevant to the whole subject of witnesses, of testimonies, the question is, what happens if there's a video of the wedding? Parenthetically, there's an unspoken struggle. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, between the rabbi of the chuppah and the photographer. If you're a good photographer, then you stand up right there, right in front of the guy's face, and you take pictures and the wedding and make sure the foot is in the right way of breaking the glass, and everything is. But the rabbi, there are some basic things, for example, that the witnesses have to see, and if they didn't see it, then there's no wedding. So it's I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's I was taught when I learned about how to officiate at a wedding that we have to be careful. You have to be obviously respectful to the photographer, but there has to be a clear understanding that the wedding has to happen. The photographer is taking pictures of the wedding, but the wedding has to be according to halacha number one. So with all due respect, just stand to the side and try to get a view from underneath, or I don't know from where, from out of space. But the wedding has to be. So the question is, if we don't know if a certain thing was done halachically, and there are many video cameras, and everyone's standing at every event with all their phones, and the one phone on the head, one phone over here, one phone from the pocket, one phone, they're all around, there are 100 phones, and there's almost no angle that is unmissed. So when we talk about so it could be that a certain video, maybe that could be a proof, not to substitute for an aid, for a witness, but if we're not sure, let's say there are many things that could have happened. There are a million examples. If the Chatan gave the ketubah to the Kal, excuse me, please. There are many examples that could happen. So we don't go according to the video, because today you can change things. It's unbelievable, and you can probably give us a whole lesson You can make it look as if something totally different happened. You could even probably, I guess, make it different people. I don't know what the limit is.
Yeah.
Please share with us.
Video is no longer admissible in court since about 1995.
Even in the secular court?
Even in the secular
No
court,
way.
because you can't prove that
Interesting.
what you're seeing was real.
It's unbelievable. This
It
is.
used to be a picture's worth 1,000 words.
That's right.
Follow the time.
That's right. Wow.
That's where all the false news come from.
Yeah, unfortunately. Today, it's
The
unbelievable.
whole premise is that we can't believe what we're seeing.
It's actually,
and
in a
there's
way,
no-
refreshing.
there's
Like
no
I
way to
said, the
prove
Rambam
what
is
you're
delicious.
seeing.
And I love that.
You need to have
Video,
two human
we
beings.
give them alive,
Very nice.
that US Shemayim, people like this, and that's ultimately something you can't mess with. So
Yeah, fair.
this is
See,
what
you
some-
can't get away from the old-fashioned system, and the
Old
Torah is not old-fashioned.
Old
Torah is
Testament.
relevant even in 2021. Wanted to add something, Mordechai?
No.
Okay.
That's absolutely right.
So let's move on to halacha gimel, the third halacha. Hamatmin edim, someone who hides witnesses. He has a setup. He's setting this up. He does something, but he puts two witnesses behind there. That's how I got into this thing. Maybe today, we even Bashkacha Pratis. We spoke about it this morning on our online shiur for Pirkei Avot. We talked about the fact that ayin ro'ah, there's an eye that sees. For ozen shomat, there's an ear that listens. And I talked about how this is very relevant today. Over the past couple of decades, we can appreciate this concept much more than any other time in history. What do you mean ayin ro'ah? We believe that Hashem sees, and it's very nice. It's very special, but we can't relate to it. But ayin ro'ah. Today we could look right here. I don't have to go too far. Right over there in the corner, there's a camera, and there are many places. There's a what's called hidden circuit, where you don't even know that there's a camera looking at you, but we're watched from all over. In the shiur this morning, we tried to bring out the positive sense in it, that we see that we're coming closer to Mashiach's coming, and we're able to relate better to things that for over 5,000 years, over 5,500 years, we weren't able to relate to it. It was such a loft, a distant concept, remote, that there's this eye that sees, which we believed it, but it wasn't tangible, if you will. So getting back to our subject. Today, probably it's easier in the sense of recordings and videos and all that stuff, video cameras. So someone who hides, who sets up Eidim Lachavero to his friend, V'hodalo Beino Leben Atzmo, and they made a setup. They made it as if we're doing off the record, as they say. And in the meantime, there are two witnesses over there that are listening in. The ha'edim ro'in v'shomin, and the witnesses see and they hear. Shehu omer, as the guy says to his friend, Vada yesh lecha etzli kach v'kach. For sure, I have a certain amount of money of yours. Aval mityareani, but I'm afraid. He thinks no one's listening. Aval mityareani shema tichpeni badin l'machar. Maybe you're going to take me to the court tomorrow, and you'll force me to take out the money. This is not a good edut. You can't say, I myself heard how A said to B that he owes him money. Until it will be clear. You have to be a mensch. You have to be ethical. You can't just hide people behind. It doesn't work like that. I on a similar note, I talked parenthetically this morning about the idea of recordings and how it has to be ethical. You have to tell a person that if you're recording someone, you have to tell them. And it bothers me very much. One of the, I don't want to say names, but I'm sure you heard a few years ago, one of the elected officials, highly elected officials in Israel, was unfortunately accused and put in jail for monetary issues. And so one of the things was where his own secretary, she was like the head of staff of his office for I think 30 or 40 years, pulled out recordings against him that he said decades beforehand. So I'm trying to think to myself, this is absurd. Here you're talking about someone who was officially they were close, officially they were trusted, and why would you be recording someone without their knowledge, and this is 30 or 40 years ago, this is a long time ago. So this whole thing is way beyond me, but I think we have to learn from this, not only the negative side of it, but mainly the positive side, how ethical we should be, and how careful we should be in doing things properly, upfront, and respectfully, and honor a person for who they are. Okay. Let's continue. Number 4, Dalet. Echad hamodeh b'fnei edim. One person that admits in front of witnesses. V'amar derech hoda'ah. He said in a way of admitting, agreeing. Zeh yesh lo etzli kach v'kach. This guy has by me a certain amount of money. In other words, I owe him. I have to pay him back. O Shamar, or he said, Atem Eidai, you are my witnesses. O Shamar, or he said, Heyu alai edim. You should be, in Hebrew it's a little bit different, you should be as witnesses for me. Bein Shamar haloveh, whether it was the borrower who said it, Bein Shamar hamalveh, or it was the lender that said it, Vishatak haloveh, and if it was the lender that said it and the borrower was quiet, derech ma'amin l'dvarav, as if he believes, we have a rule, shtika k'hoda'ah, sometimes when you're quiet, it's as if you're admitting it. Shtika, being quiet, k'hoda'ah, it's as if you're admitting. Because if you don't agree, then voice your opinion. What's the word? Stand up and say something. But if you didn't say anything, it means that you're sort of agreeing to what the person said.
He didn't defend himself.
Exactly. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. If you don't agree, then defend yourself. Stand up. Don't just be quiet there and make as if everything is fine and dandy. Harei elu edim. These are, even though it wasn't set up specifically as these two witnesses, but it's pretty clear from the context of what's happening that there are witnesses, and they said you are the witnesses, and even if it wasn't officially the way the proper thing would have been set up, they are considered witnesses. The ein tzarich lomar, and obviously im kanu miyodo, if they did a kinyan, we have sometimes you want to acquire from someone, so it's not if you want to know that the witnesses are good witnesses, that they lift up, or the individual, the borrower makes a kinyan, exactly. Take a handkerchief or a pen or a gartel, something which is a keli, some kind of vessel, and you lift it up, and it's symbolic to say that it's as if I'm lifting, it's as if I'm buying this, because that's one of the ways of acquiring something, and so I am agreeing to what you're so it's a much stronger way than just saying with your mouth. If you're actually doing something, it's a maaseh. It's a much stronger. So for sure, if they made a kinyan, and that's much more like almost officially that you are real edim, witnesses. O shamar lehem, or if he said to them, Kitvu alai shtar, write for me a document. Sheyesh lezeh etzli kach v'kach, that this person has by me a certain amount of money. The chol kayetzeh b'dvarim elu, or etc., anything like that. Hareim hoda'ah, that's called admitting, that's called agreeing. Umeidin al piv, the Rambam rules that you can say testimony if this was the case, and the person basically admitted, and there were the witnesses. Hey, number 5. Talmid shamar lo rabo, a student that his teacher said to him, Yodea ata, you know, she'im notnim li kol mamon ha'olam, if you give me as much money as possible, all the money in the world, eini mishaker, I'm not going to lie. Mane yesh li etzel ploni, I have $100 by that person. In other words, he owes me. V'yesh li alav et echad, and I have one witness. Usually we need al pi shnayim edim, or usually we need 2. And I have lech v'tzaraf imo. So he tells his teacher, you should be together with that other witness. In nitztaref, if they came together to the Beit Din, harei zeh et sheker. He is a false witness.
Can you explain that?
Sure. You're basically saying
First you said to your teacher, all the money you give me, I'm not a liar. I don't
Correct.
lie.
Even, that's the chidush. Even in the scenario that a person seems, he paints himself as such a big tzaddik,
Tzaddik, yeah.
but he's saying it to himself.
Yeah, no, that doesn't count first.
I'm sorry, one second.
Now he says, I have to, somebody owes him money and they only have one weakness. So
Correct.
what's the problem now?
So the problem is, can this student of the teacher, can he be combined with the real witness that really saw officially, that really saw the transaction? But only one person really saw it. So even if it's your teacher, that's the chidush. Even if it's your teacher, wow, my teacher, he says that I have to trust him and I don't want to embarrass him and I have to respect him. Nevertheless, you cannot say testimony that someone else, not that he said, I know that I owe you. This guy says, I lent him.
I lent him.
He owes me. So I'm sorry. It was your responsibility to make sure that there are two witnesses there.
Yeah. So this one witness is considered a checker. Or you are considered
The first ed, if there really is one witness that was really there, so he's good. He's saying his own.
good,
He's
yeah.
saying his thing. But this Talmid, this student,
He's got-
is not allowed to testify even for his teacher.
What's this word nitztarev?
Nitztaref becomes joins
Together.
together, joins together.
Thank you.
Letzaref, you're welcome. We also say that by, I think, someone that is. I'm just showing how the word tziruf is also when you melt. I think when you melt metal or silver or gold. So it's called the profession, even in Hebrew, is called, I think, tzoref. It's called tziruf. Basically, you're mushing together all of the substance, whatever it is, metal or whatever it is, and then you make a menorah or whatever. So it's that whole the idea is to connect into whatever. Okay. Next, Vav. Two more halachot until the end of this chapter. Vav. Amar lo, if he says to him, one person, Reuben says to Shimon, Bo va'amodim ha'ed. Come, I have one witness that saw something that happened that I need you, but there's only one witness. Just stand there. We're going to fool the Beit Din. Just it will look as if you're two witnesses. V'lo ta'id, don't have to say one word. Just be a tzaddik. K'dei sheyira haloveh, in order that the borrower should see you there. V'yivchad, and he'll be frightened. V'ya'aleh al dato, and it will occur to him she'atem shnei edim, that you are two witnesses. V'yodeh me'atzmo, and then he'll agree, possibly not truly, but he'll just be so afraid that he'll. He's not allowed to stand there. He's not allowed to make as if the Torah is Torat Emet, a Torah of truth, and we're not allowed to make as if that the person is standing there next to as if there are two witnesses. Even though he doesn't say the actual testimony. And on this and other things, like it says, Midvar Sheker Tirchak. From a word of lie, false, you should go far away. Far away. I once heard from a great rabbi. He's actually a Rosh Kol over here in Yerushalayim. He should live long and be well. I heard from him maybe 30 years ago. He told us that there are two mitzvahs, two prohibitive mitzvahs, that it says you should go far from. Every other prohibitive mitzvah is don't do this, don't kill, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that. But there are two things that you have to go far away from. The first subject we could talk about another time. It's a whole other subject about relationships between a husband and wife during the 12 days that they're not allowed to have physical contact. And over there it says it's called harchakot. The Chachamim gave us all kinds of tips, all kinds of instructions. Not even Hashem knows that we are human beings, and even one touch can bring to much more intimate relationships. So therefore, the Torah tells us harchakot, not in your soul. In your soul, you have to in relationship as far as feeling for the person, for your spouse, and showing them care, emotional support, it's a time to build on that specifically during those 12 days, especially because physical contact is not allowed. But nonetheless, we have to know the halacha. And there are many laws in that. There are many, many laws in the Shulchan Aruch about harchakot, how not to come even close. Then, in our subject, midvar sheker tirchak, when it comes to a lie, it doesn't just say don't lie. It says midvar sheker tirchak, go as far with a 10-foot pole. Go far away, because the nature of a human being is, it's not so bad, you know. But the Torah keeps us straight. The Torah is a Torah of truth. And so if someone sees a scenario of lying and not being honest, not being truthful, tirchak, go far away from it. So that's over here. A person could say, what do you mean? I didn't say a lie. I just stood next to the guy. Doesn't matter. Tirchak, if it has any odor, any sense of lying, don't even do it. Don't come close to it. Don't be part of this scenario. One more halacha. Halacha zayin. Hasocher eidei sheker l'ha'id l'chavero. This is really bad. Someone who hires false witnesses to l'ha'id, to say testimony for his friend. In other words, but a certain scenario. Patur midinei adam. He does not have a penalty in the Beit Din in this world. However, v'chayav b'dei shamayim. There are, I think, 4 or 5 things that are in this category of patur midinei adam, that the Beit Din can't give him a penalty. Like, you do this, you get that. But Hashem Yerachim, Hashem should protect all of us. There's certain things which are chayav b'dinei shamayim. Hakadosh Baruch Hu finds his way. He finds his way to punish a person. So that's the halacha. Patur midinei adam, v'chayav b'dinei shamayim. The Beit Din cannot hold the person up. The Beit Din cannot hold him accountable for paying, for example. So let's say Ruvain, they testified that Ruvain owes Shimon, for example, $100, and there was a lie. So you can't hold that guy that hired the witnesses to pay. That's the halacha. But nevertheless, because we have a rule in damages that grama, it's a cause. Gorem is a cause. In other words, if it's an indirect damage, you didn't go and hit the person, but you did enough things that brought about, you caused it, so patur. Grama b'nei zaken is patur in damages, at least in the subject of monetary.
The same word for on Shabbat if you want to do something and not break the halacha. Find another word. Grama.
Indirect cause.
Correct. Indirect. One more line, which also has to do with the subject of witnesses, and it has the same bottom line, the same ruling. V'chein eid echad shekavash eduto, one witness that withheld his testimony. As we said in the beginning, even before we started, that one of the mitzvahs, prohibitive mitzvah, that you're not allowed to withdraw information that you know about a certain scenario. V'lo ha'id, but it's only one witness. So he could say, listen, I'm only one witness, so I wouldn't make a difference anyways.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You have a mitzvah. If you know something, where they say in the MTA in New York, if you see something, say something. That's their line, or whatever it is. So it's the same thing. If you know a certain edut, it's a mitzvah. It's a positive mitzvah. We have to tell the Beit Din. Same thing. He can't say, he could say, I'm only one witness anyways. You wouldn't do anything. It doesn't matter. Patur midinei adam. Person is exempt from the laws of Dinei Adam, the Beit Din, they cannot hold him accountable. However, unfortunately, v'chayav b'dinei shamayim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu knows the truth, and according to Halacha, Hashem will pay the person back. So we have a rule, Mesaimin B'tov. We finish off with a good thing. It's always good to finish. I think Baruch Hashem, we learned a lot of great things today in chapter 17. And even one chapter of Rambam out of the 3, this is the first of 3 chapters for today. Today is 17, 18, and 19. So they're relatively speaking short, but Bezrat Hashem, I really look forward to being able to share throughout the future, when filling in for one of the for one of the rabbis, a chapter here, a chapter there of Rambam. I think is fascinating, and hopefully will get us into the hang of it of learning Rambam. And as I said in the beginning, feel free to go on our website. Today, there's almost no excuse not to learn Torah, because there's so much, especially on our new website that we put together. There's a tremendous wealth of knowledge, audio, video, articles, written articles. And so you can look at the daily study and look at the daily Rambam. It's also in English over there and in Hebrew. And the main thing is that we should live up to our Hashem's expectations of us. Same name, JerusalemChabad.org. JerusalemChabad.org. On the top you have adult education. Just put the cursor on there. You'll drop down and you'll see daily study. And you just put the cursor on there and you'll see the daily Chumash, the daily Tehillim, the daily Tanya, the daily Rambam, all of our classes, and Baruch Hashem, we're hopefully we're trying to be on top of the situation because obviously technology today is really what's taking the lead, and Baruch Hashem, we have close to 2,200 likes on our Facebook page. We're really building up our Instagram and YouTube. We have Baruch Hashem almost 450 videos. Just from the majority of them are from the past year, all the different events and classes and shiurim that we've had, and we have almost 200 subscribers, which is for us is Baruch Hashem huge. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you wherever you are, whenever you'll listen to this shiur. I'm looking at this camera right over here, I called a friend of mine yesterday in the States, and he said, it was 10 or 11 o'clock last night, PM over here. He says, I'm in the middle of listening to your shiur. This is a true story. It happened last night. I'm in the middle of listening to your shiur from this morning, the first shiur, Pirkei Avot, Perek Bet, Mishnah Aleph. It's a true story. So, Toda Rabba, thank you so much. Bezrat Hashem, Lahagdil, Torah v'La'adira. We should have the merit of learning more and more Torah and bringing more Torah into our area. Shikoch.